Good morning, everyone. So we're starting our session. It's my great pleasure to welcome you to this important event organized by the Bellona Foundation, Northern Sea Route, why it cannot become a major international trade route. My name is Yuri Sergeyev, and I am honored to moderate today's session. Bellona, as many of you may know, has been at the forefront of addressing environmental and climate challenges for nearly 4 decades. Founded in 1986, Bellona is an independent, non-governmental organization with offices in Oslo, Brussels, Berlin, and Vilnius. For almost 30 years, Bellona worked in Russia, in St. Petersburg and Murmansk, in the following spheres: nuclear safety and security, environmental rights, environmental transparency, renewable energy, industrial pollution, and environmental education. After the Russian invasion of Ukraine on February 24, 2022, Bellona closed its offices in Russia and relocated in place to Vilnius, Lithuania, where we continue analysis of environmental risk originating in Russia with a focus on nuclear and radiation safety, both in Russia and Ukraine, and industrial pollution and climate change in Arctic. Today's discussion will dive into pressing questions around the Northern Sea Route, which has long been portrayed by Russia as the future of global shipping, a shorter, faster alternative to traditional maritime routes. However, as our speakers will explore today, the reality is far more complex. Beyond the political ambitions and grand narratives lies a fragile Arctic ecosystem, facing enormous pressure from industrial expansion, oil and gas projects, increasing ship traffic through some of the most sensitive waters on Earth. In 2024 alone, oil and gas shipments accounted for over 84% of cargo moving through the Northern Sea Route, underscoring the extent to which fossil fuel extraction underpins Russia's Arctic strategy. While international sanctions have slowed down some development, they haven't stopped it. A growing lack of transparency has created significant challenges for monitoring and assessing the region. Infrastructure and preparation for emergencies such as oil spills or vessel accidents remain alarmingly inadequate. Rescue and response capabilities are limited, with ships potentially stranded for weeks in the ice. Adding to that are the so-called shadow fleet of aging, poorly regulated tankers operating outside normal oversight, vessels that often sail without transponders, evade insurance, and pose major environmental hazards. And while the Northern Sea Route is often presented as promising economic opportunity, it is in fact deeply constrained by geography, climate, and infrastructure, and burdened by growing environmental and security concerns. To help us better understand these challenges, we are fortunate to have an outstanding panel of experts with us today. Ksenia Vakhrusheva, Project Manager and Arctic Project Advisor at Bellona Environmental Transparency Center, who will present Bellona's latest findings on Russia's industrial and political expansion in Arctic, its environmental costs and shipping risks. Dmitry Gorchikov, Nuclear Advisor at Bellona Environmental Transparency Center, will address the risk of radiation contamination along the Northern Sea Route. James Gamble, Senior Director of the Arctic Program at the Pacific Environment, who will discuss the pollution risk associated with increased Arctic shipping. And Margaret D. Williams, Senior Fellow at the Harvard Kennedy School's Arctic Initiative, will ask whether commerce and nature can truly coexist along this route. Together, these perspectives will help us see the Northern Sea Route for what it truly is, not a global trade corridor of the future, but a high-risk project with profound implications for the environment, climate, and local communities. After the presentation, we will open the floor for questions and discussions. Thank you all for joining us today. Let us begin, and I am pleased to invite our first speaker, Ksenia Vakhrusheva.
Thank you, Yuri. Hello, everyone. I'm glad to see you at our event today, and I'm thrilled to present the findings of our recent report, the Northern Sea Route, Russia's industrial and political expansion, its environmental costs, and Arctic shipping risks. We covered the following topics in our report, which is, of course, not everything which needs to be said about this complex topic, but at least it will give you some quick view on that. And I would like to start with explaining the reasons why we care about the Northern Sea Route specifically and why we believe it shouldn't be used for intensive international traffic. 2 points equally important at the current moment. First, the Northern Sea Route is not just another shipping lane. It's a comprehensive complex which includes Russian ambitions to extract and export resources and dominate in the Arctic. The desire for domination goes together with usage of destructive tools: money over environment, dictatorship over democracy, repressions against civil society and the indigenous population. In case of successful development of the Northern Sea Route, Russia will gain more economic and political influence, and these malign practices might be normalized and expanded. On the picture, you can see a standard vision of the Arctic drawn by Russian propagandistic media, with the Russian flag on the North Pole, dreaming about full dominance in the Arctic. The second reason is, of course, fragile Arctic ecosystems, which are more vulnerable to climate change, pollution, and any human activities than in other places on Earth. As I already mentioned, the Northern Sea Route is a comprehensive system, including oil, gas, coal, and minerals extractive industry, military bases, supply of remote settlements. It is under exclusive control of Russia, has a permit-based system of sailing, and is administered by the state nuclear corporation Rosatom, which is very close to Putin and is heavily involved in the war against Ukraine. On the right map, you can see in dark blue and the area which is legally constitutes the Northern Sea Route, and bear in mind that all statistics is covering this particular area. Regular use of the Northern Sea Route started with the need to ship for export natural resources mined on the Arctic land. Today, more than 80% of cargo shipments via the route is for export. On the graph, you can see how launch of major mining projects in the past influenced the cargo volume shipped via the route. Nowy Port is an oil terminal on Yamal Peninsula, and Yamal LNG is an LNG plant which still sells gas to France, Belgium, and Spain. In our information world, narratives means everything. Here's a narrative which Russia creates around the Northern Sea Route and its relation to reality. So Russia says that global warming leads to less ice coverage in the Arctic Ocean, which will allow easier all-year navigation. As shipping has no impact on environment, that was an official statement by the NSR administration referencing some Russian researchers. It's a cheaper, quicker, and environmentally friendly global trade route. Reality, as you might know, is much different. Starting with the fact that global warming does not automatically lead to easier navigation conditions. Together with ice melt, it brings severe and unpredictable weather, stronger winds, higher waves, and even small amount of ice can bring big problems for ships in narrow straits along the route and shallow waters. Intensive use of the route will lead not only to increased negative environmental and climate impact, but also to political instability in the region and more human rights violations. Another reason why NSR cannot serve as a major route for international shipping is safety concern. Looking at the map with the search and rescue centers along the Northern Sea Route, it is clear that there are very few of them, especially in the eastern part. Vessels can wait days and weeks for help if they are trapped in ice or run aground. Recent example, the LNG tanker Arctic Metagas waited for a week in September this year, and September is considered the easiest month for navigation. Oil tanker Amolit, carrying oil products, had to wait 12 days last year. Dredger Nordic Giant ran aground last year and waited 41 days for being rescued. But even if Russia manages to add another 1 or 2 rescue centers, the emergency response time won't change much in these wide areas. Among our greatest environmental concerns is a risk of oil spill, either crude oil from shadow fleet tankers or HE4, which, by the way, Russia has no intention to ban. And what is important that it is more likely that we will know about the spill from international journalists and researchers who monitor satellites than from Russian authorities. Hiding accidents is a common practice there. Recent example, after the incident with LNG tanker Arctic Metagas in September this year, the vessel's position was completely removed from the public records of the NSR administration. And since 2023, there is no statistics on incidents and accidents happened on the NSR publicly available. Other operational negative impacts from shipping listed here also exist and will, of course, rise with more ships sailing along the route. So, war and sanctions. If you see statistics, then it is clear that Russian full-scale invasion of Ukraine and the following economic sanctions clearly had negative impact on ambitions on Russian authorities to develop the Northern Sea route. The cargo volume didn't rise as they wished because two major projects were stopped by sanctions: that Arctic LNG 2 plant and Vostok oil terminal. Which means that sanctions can be effective. It is just not enough of them at the moment. As you can see also, 2023 and 2024, there was no fully international transit, but this year it will be one, doing its voyage from China to Europe exactly right now, and we don't like it. In conclusion, I would like to sum up. Here are our key messages. There is a need to minimize shipping in the Arctic due to environmental and climate concerns. Russian narrative that Northern Sea route is a quicker, cheaper, and environmentally friendly alternative to Suez Canal and other shipping routes is false. There is a clear need for stricter environmental regulations in the Arctic, which Arctic and non-Arctic states can negotiate and start practicing even without Russia. European countries and their allies should not support the intensification of shipping via the Northern Sea route, and now it is the perfect timing for sending this political signal to Asian countries who want to test it as a transit from Asia to Europe. Thank you for your attention. If you have questions, please save them for the discussion, which will be after all presentations. Thank you.
Thank you, Ksenia. And thank you to staying in timing. We have very tight schedule and a lot of speakers to hear. So I am inviting our next speaker, Dmitry Gorchakov. Please, floor is yours.
Thank you, Yuri. Good morning, everyone. My presentation reviews radiation risks along the Northern Sea route by looking at three key nuclear operators in the Arctic: the military nuclear fleet, the civilian nuclear icebreaker fleet, and nuclear power plants, both floating and land-based. No. No. A Russian military nuclear fleet in the Arctic is part of Russian Northern Fleet and is the oldest operator of nuclear installations in the region. The first nuclear submarine appeared here in 1958. The fleet's bases are mostly located in the Kola Peninsula, while its area of operations extends across the entire Northern Sea route, the Central Arctic Ocean, and the Northern Atlantic. As of 2025, the fleet includes around 30 nuclear submarines and one surface nuclear ship operating nearly 40 reactors in total. Among them, 5 strategic submarines carrying more than 300 nuclear warheads remain on combat duty. With the New START treaty between the United States and Russia expiring in 3 months, in February 2026, the world will, for the first time in decades, see the two largest nuclear powers without any agreement limiting the size of their nuclear arsenals. In this situation, Russia could potentially deploy several hundred additional warheads with its Northern Fleet, even without building new submarines. Over nearly 70 years of operation, the Northern Fleet has also become the main source of nuclear waste and accidents in the Arctic. At the bottom of the Arctic seas lie about 10 nuclear reactors and several sunken submarines, including the most dangerous ones, Ki-27 and Ki-159, which Russia is unlikely to rise on its own due to a lack of funds and technology. The major nuclear accidents of the past 25 years, many involving casualties and sometimes radiation releases, have also occurred at military facilities during exercises, tests, or routine operations. For obvious reasons, Russia's military nuclear technologies remain classified and beyond any independent oversight. Therefore, the ongoing militarization of the Arctic continues to present a key radiation risk. Alongside military projects, Russia continues to develop civilian nuclear infrastructure to support industrial activities and shipping in the Arctic. The Northern Sea route mainly serves the export of minerals and fossil resources, requiring year-round navigation. For more than 65 years, nuclear icebreakers have been central to this effort. Today, 8 are in operation, half of them built within the past 5 years, and 4 more are planned. However, these programs face increasing challenges due to the war in Ukraine, sanctions on Russia, and the breakdown of cooperation with Western suppliers. These factors affect both shipbuilding and the Arctic mining projects the icebreakers are intended to support. Russia operates 3 of its 11 nuclear power plants in the Arctic. Within the next 15 years, up to 5 new Arctic nuclear power plants with around 17 reactors are planned. Russia uses the Arctic as a testing ground for new reactor designs not yet built elsewhere in the country, aiming for future export of these reactors. All these stations, except the Kola nuclear power plant, will require nuclear fuel transport along the Northern Sea route, including the return of spent fuel. This will make nuclear fuel the main radioactive cargo on the route. Given the poor emergency infrastructure, such shipments will increase both the likelihood of accidents and their potential consequences. Most of the planned nuclear plants are intended to supply power to mining and resource extraction facilities, so their implementation depends on the economic feasibility and export of Arctic minerals, both of which remain uncertain under current sanctions and international pressure on Russia. Let me highlight one of the oldest nuclear power plants in the Russian Arctic, the Bellona plant in Chukotka. It has been operating for more than 50 years. The first of its 4 reactors was shut down 5 years ago, and by the end of this year, the remaining 3 will also be closed. The main issue is that the spent nuclear fuel from this plant has never been removed. Over time, more than 8,000 fuel assemblies weighing around 200 tons have accumulated on site. Most likely, fuel removal will begin after 2040, and it will be transported along the Northern Sea route to Murmansk, and then by rail to the Mayak processing facility in central Russia. This will become one of the most complex and potentially risky nuclear transport operations ever planned in the Arctic.
1 minute.
Okay. This slide summarizes estimates of nuclear facilities and materials along the Northern Sea route for the next decade. The number of military reactors will likely remain stable or slightly decline as older submarines are retired, but the number of nuclear warheads could grow rapidly once the new START expires, by at least 100 in the coming years. Number of nuclear icebreakers and nuclear power plants in the Arctic may increase significantly in the coming years. The number of reactors at these plants could triple. The volume of nuclear fuel transported along the Northern Sea route may grow tenfold by 2035, and after 2040, with the removal of Bellona fuel, by 20 to 30 times. And finally, a few words about the conclusions and recommendations. The main radiation risk in the Arctic is still associated with the military use of nuclear technologies. Within 10 years, for the first time, the number of civilian reactors could equal the military total, about 35 each. This will increase the transport of nuclear materials along the Northern Sea route by 10 to 30 times, raising serious safety concerns. And last but not least, sanctions and pressure on Russia over its aggression against Ukraine are slowing down the development of Arctic projects, including those involving nuclear technologies. This pressure should be maintained and increased for both political and environmental reasons. Thank you.
Thank you, Dmitry, and we'll continue saving time for questions. So the next speaker, James Gamble, please.
Good morning, everybody, and thanks much to Bellona for the opportunity to speak to you today. I'm going to speak sort of broadly about shipping and drill down in a few areas to look at what's happening in the NSR. So these are things we already know. We know how fast the Arctic is warming, how unlikely it is that we're going to be able to keep that warming below 1.5 degrees, and Arctic temperatures are rising significantly faster than the global average, especially since 2000. So, maritime shipping is one of the world's top climate polluters. It's roughly Germany to Japan, if you put it in country terms. 90% of the world's trade is often quoted. That's a little bit of a tricky statistic, though, because if you look at critical trade, the figure would be far below 90%. Shipping does burn the very dirtiest of the fossil fuels, heavy fuel oil, and 1 billion metric tons of climate pollution a year, and rising as shipping increases in the region. Oftentimes, one of the benefits of using Arctic routes is that they take less time. That means that the ships themselves emit less climate pollutants. But the climate pollutants they do emit, in particular black carbon, makes use of Arctic routes very problematic. Maritime shipping emits a lot of black carbon, and it is a major contributor to rapid sea ice decline. Black carbon's warming impact, about 1,500 times greater than CO2 on a 20-year global average. And the darkened surfaces, as black carbon settles on the ice and snow, absorbs more heat, accelerates the melt of both sea ice, snow, and glaciers. And this incurrence of fresh water into the system does disrupt major ocean currents, and I think a lot of us have seen this information about the AMOC, the Atlantic Meridional Overturning Circulation. This will have cascading effects on our climate moving forward. In addition, there's significant public health impacts from particulate matter pollution, especially black carbon. People that live close to sources of this black carbon have increased rates of cardiovascular disease, respiratory illness, and premature mortality. And in the Arctic, where people have lived for millennia and who depend on subsistence hunting and fishing, this degradation of the air quality, this degradation of ice impacts traditional food sources and, in fact, also impacts culture. So black carbon does have a outsized impact in the Arctic because of this very change in the albedo effect. And that's why taking into account black carbon emissions from shipping, the advantage to a shorter route to less days on the water really declines. And shipping is increasing in the Arctic, as we've just seen statistics about that. Shipping is happening more, and unfortunately, the type of shipping that's increasing is the very type that's going to bring a lot of black carbon and particulate matter pollution to these routes. 20% of shipping's total climate forcing is from black carbon, and very significantly between 2015 and 2021, Arctic shipping-related black carbon emissions roughly doubled. So this is the case on all Arctic routes, not just the NSR. The transpolar route would have the same problems. The Northwest Passage would have the same problems. And certainly the issues we've seen of difficulty that ships get into, this applies to all routes as well. And some examples that we've been seeing just very recently, the Thames Bure, which was aground in the Northwest Passage, just recently was refloated after a very extensive operation. I think it's significant to remember that the Thames Bure is a ship that operates in that region all the time. They are experienced operators, and they still had this difficulty, which is related to a number of factors, among those poor charting in the region. In addition, on the Northern Sea Route, there's been a number of vessels that have been transiting the route without proper ice protection, without proper certifications, and the lack of transparency around this makes it particularly troubling. So, growth in Arctic shipping is bad news, and it's the result of a destabilized Arctic environment. Thanks to Clean Arctic Alliance for this infographic that really shows all of the factors that are related to shipping in the Arctic and its danger to the climate and to the people. Temperatures are increasing. They're going to continue to increase. Sea level rise is increasing. Acidification also increases because cold water can contain more CO2. Arctic waters will be more acid than waters further south. And really, if there was one thing we could do that I think would help the planet in the next 3 to 5 years, it would be to slow Arctic melt as much as we possibly can. And luckily, it actually could be done if we would just ban fuels that emit black carbon in the Arctic.
1 minute.
So, I ran through these slides pretty quickly, but the good news is this QR code will take you to our recent report, Pacific Environment's recent report on thin ice, why black carbon demands urgent action. All of the things I've discussed now and much more is included in this report. Please feel free to link to it, to download it, and any questions related to it, happy to go into those. Thanks for your attention. I think I'll just say real quickly, the numbers often are used in a way to try to convince, but in reality, when you drill down to the numbers, how much critical cargo is moving through the Arctic? It tends not to be very critical cargoes, with the exception of traffic that's resupplying Arctic communities. Transiting traffic, these are cargoes that don't need to be moved through a sensitive region like the Arctic. So, thank you very much.
Thank you, James. And the next speaker, as stated in the program, is Andrey Danilov. It's Sami activist and a member of International Community of Indigenous Peoples of Russia. We hoped that he could come in person, but after a long three years of waiting, he was finally granted a political asylum status in Norway, and at the moment he's unable to travel as his documents are not ready yet. But Mr. Danilov has long championed rights and cultural preservation for Sami community, both in Russia and internationally. Although he's unable to join us today in person, we're honored to feature his voice and experience in our session. His journey underscores both the risk faced by activists in Russia and the significance of international protection, and we look forward to reflecting on his insights through his written contribution and the message he has entrusted us with. So, on behalf of Mr. Danilov, dear guests, when I lived in Russia, and even now, my heart has always carried one constant preoccupation, the land of my ancestors. Like many Sami, I ask myself, what will I leave behind? Will my people endure? These are questions that define my life, as they do for so many of my people. Today, I want to speak about Northern Sea Route and how this grand project may shape and even threaten the future of the Sami. We hear so much about Northern Sea Route, about millions of tons of cargo, about new Arctic highway that is meant to become the pride of Russia. But let us ask a simple, honest question. What does all this mean for those who lived in the Arctic for centuries, for millennia? I am speaking about the Sami of the Kola Peninsula, an indigenous people. Only about 1,500 of us remain. Our traditions, reindeer herding, fishing, hunting, depend entirely on the land and the sea. For us, the Northern Sea Route is not a symbol of progress. For us, it may become the road to extinction. The Northern Sea Route means a sharp rise in shipping through the Barents and White Seas. Tankers, coal barges, gas carriers, all increasing the risk of accidents. It is not a secret that Russia now relies on what is called the shadow fleet to transport oil and gas. The environmental group Bellona warns many of these vessels are old, worn out, uninsured, and sometimes sail without functioning transponders. If an accident happens, no one will take responsibility. Now imagine what that would mean for the Sami. An oil spill in our coastal waters and the fish, the foundation of our diet and our culture, could vanish for decades. Without fish, there is no fishing, no traditional trade, no way of life. The coastal tundra would be poisoned, destroying the reindeer summer pastures, and with them, reindeer herding itself. And what is the reindeer to the Sami? It's our life, our spirit, our ancestors. Without the reindeer, the Sami people themselves will disappear. But the threat is not only environmental, it's also social and political. In 2021, Elena Yakovleva, the founder of the Sami Shore Museum, spoke of being kidnapped and threatened. She was forced to leave the land where she had built an ethnocultural center. As she told it, "They took me far out to the shore of the bay. Acting on behalf of Novatek, they threatened me and demanded that I abandon the territory. They left me outside a log house. For 2 days I ate nothing and slept outdoors. Then I managed to break into a small cabin, found a half-deflated boat and set off toward home across the bay. Luckily, sailors, rescuers and guards found me." This story shows how dangerous it has become to defend culture and tradition. When a Sami reindeer herder is threatened, it's not just one person who is under attack, it is the collective memory of entire people. Sami organizations warn that large industrial projects in the Barents Sea are often carried out without consulting indigenous communities. This creates deep mistrust and a painful sense of being pushed aside. Valentina Sovkina, activist and the member of UN Permanent Forum of Indigenous Issues, put it in this way when speaking about the proposed platinum mine in the Fedorova tundra. "If we allow mining now, we will lose our land forever, but the company promises jobs." Here lies the tragic choice: to preserve our land and culture, or to accept short-term promises of jobs and corporate bonuses. Major industrial companies have merged with state authorities. For them, profit comes first. For them, the Sami do not count. And the worst part, we are no longer masters of our own land, the land of our ancestors. Even if we set emotion aside, the numbers speak for themselves. Only 1,363 Sami remain in Russia, 2024 census. Only 16% still speak their native language, and that number keeps falling each year. There is no full educational program in the Sami language. This means that our language and culture stand on the edge of extinction, and the expansion of the Northern Sea Route only speeds up that decline. Bellona's recent Arctic report emphasized that Sami cultural initiatives, museums, ethnic centers suffer from lack of support and from administrative pressure. International organizations are sounding the alarm. The Sami are losing not only their land, but also their voice in public dialogue. The Northern Sea Route is not only about tankers and ports, it's a direct threat to the survival of indigenous peoples of the North, of Siberia, and of the Far East. Peoples who have lived here long before any geopolitical ambitions was born. For the state, this is a property of the century. For the Sami, it's a question of life and death. If today we allow activists to be kidnapped and threatened, traditional lands to be destroyed, and indigenous voices to be ignored, then tomorrow we risk losing not just one people. We will lose a part of the Arctic itself, its living soul. Let me end with a line from the film Continental Rebellion. There are things that are hard to talk about, but silence leads nowhere. We must speak and try to understand, even when there seems to be no hope. Hope does not die. It moves into the new hearts, like the spring wind that carries the scent of summer. Thank you, Andrey, Danilov, Sami. And I'm giving the floor to our last but not least speaker, Margaret, please.
And can you help me cue the...
Yeah,
Okay.
and it will go on screen just in a second.
The green one? I pressed the green. Okay,
Yeah.
great. Well, after those very stirring and important words about the costs and risks, costs of shipping on civil society, on Indigenous people, I'd like to speak about some of the risks to biodiversity and some of the biodiversity values of the Northern Sea Route. And then I'll end by summarizing what I think are priority measures to maximize environmental protection along the Northern Sea Route. First of all, I want to say that the Northern Sea Route, the area that the Northern Sea Route traverses, is tremendously important for biological diversity. This map, I erroneously left out an important credit. This was made with Boris Solovyov, and this map comes from the program ArcNet, developed by World Wildlife Fund. And the blue lines show the main shipping routes that come through the Northern Shipping Route area. And it is a place of tremendous biological diversity that has long been recognized by the Russian Federation. And the green areas are areas that have been designated already as protected areas. And there's so many, I can't name them all, but in the western region, we have Nenetsky Nature Reserve, which has vast coastal wetlands. And in the middle of the shipping route, we have the New Siberian Islands, which is a wildlife sanctuary, and also there's a polynya there. Polynyas are areas that are kept open year-round and are important for overwintering seabirds and marine mammals. The rare Laptev walrus is found here. Further east, we go to the Wrangel Island Nature Reserve, known as the polar bear nursery of the world, and a place where rare seabirds nest. And if you keep going east, you come to the Bering Strait, one of the most important migratory choke points for wildlife, and a place of tremendous cultural diversity as well. This is one of the most important global areas for marine mammal migrations in the entire, as I said, globally important. And throughout the Arctic, as we've heard, we know warming is, sea temperatures and air temperatures are warming, and these warming temperatures are having huge impacts on marine wildlife. So we already have marine life at every level of the marine food chain, which is being compromised and at risk because of these changes in the environment. And these are species that have evolved over thousands and thousands of years to live in this extreme environment. And now we're adding this whole new threat of shipping. Vessels through ship traffic involve so many new risks. For example, as Jim mentioned, vessels introduce super pollutants into the atmosphere, specifically black carbon, which, as he referred to, accelerates the loss of sea ice and snow cover. Again, so important for wildlife. Along with shipping comes the need for port infrastructure, which destroys habitat on and offshore. And there's a recent announcement by Rosatom, the agency which manages the Northern Sea Route, which has plans to massively dredge in and around all of its ports. I think they've estimated a need to dredge over 60 million tons of sediments out of these various ports, which exceeds the number of tonnage being transported annually along the Northern Sea Route. Vessel traffic and port construction and operation contributes noise pollution, which is highly disturbing to marine mammals, which depend on the ability to communicate underwater. Ship traffic also poses the risk of collisions with wildlife. And of course, whether they're carrying oil or using heavy fuel oil as fuel, the risk of oil spills is another great concern represented by shipping. Currently, Russia continues to operate tankers which belong to a category of ships that have been banned under MARPOL, the Convention for the International Convention for the Prevention of Pollution by Ships. These are two examples shown here. But there's another category of ships that is still tankers that is still permitted under MARPOL that Russia continues to operate, and these should be banned. These are single-hulled vessels, primarily small, from 600 to 5,000 tons, but an accident involving even these small vessels can be catastrophic for the marine environment. And you may remember last December there was a very significant oil spill in the Kerch Strait in the Black Sea involving just these kinds of small, single-hulled tankers. So right now in the Russian Far East and the Russian Arctic, 60 of these single-hulled tankers are continuing to operate. One area of the Northern Sea route, which would be, where traffic is significantly increasing, and the numbers are shown here on the right, is the Bering Strait, which I already mentioned is so important. And fortunately, on the US side of the Bering Strait, there is a program that is monitoring vessel movement. It's called the Marine Exchange of Alaska, and this is a highly sophisticated monitoring program. The Marine Exchange has also started a program called Arctic Watch. You can see the logo and look up more information about that here. And that's engaging scientists and Indigenous communities in informing the shipping companies and vessels traveling through the region about what's happening in the region in real time. The idea is to inform shippers about wildlife migrations, Indigenous whaling activities, various activities that ships need to be aware of. So currently, the big question that I posed was, can nature and commerce coexist along the Northern Sea route? And currently, pretty much by all measures, nature is losing. When we pit nature against industry, nature always comes out on the losing side. And if we want to equalize make the equation a little bit more balanced and equalize both sides in the Northern Sea route, there are a number of measures that really must be implemented. Both by IMO and other regulatory agencies, as well as as industry. First of all single-hulled tankers should be prohibited in Arctic waters. All aging tankers should be prohibited, and I don't know what the exact threshold should be, maybe 45 years, maybe 40. Some of those vessels that I mentioned of the 60 single-hulled tankers operating in the Russian Far East and the Arctic are up to 60. Some are 40, many are 50, a couple of them are 60 years old. Way too old to be operating in this extreme environment. Exemptions for the ban on heavy fuel oil should be ended. All vessels should be switching to clean fuels, and we already heard a great case for that from Jim. Black carbon should be measured and reported on. Underwater noise can and should be reduced. That can be through ship design as well as speed limits. Voyage planning needs to be implemented by all ships, and vessel monitoring, the likes of which we've seen through the Marine Exchange, should be implemented across the entire Arctic and scaled up around our Arctic oceans. So I think that's it for me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Margaret. Thank you, our honorable speakers, and I think we save enough time to some questions. So please, if you want to have a question, raise your hand. Our volunteers will come to you with the microphone, and our speakers will try to do their best to help you. So please, let's start from that side. Please state your name and where you're from.
Yeah, Lawson Brigham, University of Alaska, Fairbanks. I wondered what your precise definition of the Northern Sea route is for Bellona. I think there are different definitions, but there's only one legal definition. So it's what definition do you use for the Northern Sea route in your report?
I guess it's for Ksenia, right?
Thank you. Yes, I explained that there are different ways how you can see and define the Northern Sea route. If you see it from the purely legally perspective, which exists now in Russian laws, this is the water area which was in dark blue on my map. And this is a large water area exactly because there is no single route. Because at different times, the navigation conditions, weather, ice conditions significantly influence the way and the exact route that each ship should take. That's why it's not the line, it's a wide water area. But we as an organization, we perceive this route as wider than just purely legally perspective. Because why Russia uses this route? To ship mineral resources. This is 80% of shipping is just mineral resources. So you cannot exclusively see this route as a shipping lane. That's the whole industrial complex around. Also, Arctic is not just an economic interest of Russia. It's also a security base. It's, as Dmitry said, that nuclear presence is there enormous. It's historically so, and it still continues to be. So we cannot just leave this out of our picture. We need to take it into perspective. Indigenous population, local communities, we also should take them into account. And this also involves our perspective, how we see the Northern Sea route. Because supply of local population is also a part of the usage of the Northern Sea route, which is extremely important. So yes, we see it much larger and wider than just pure legal definition, which exists right now in the laws. By the way, there is Russian authorities now want to extend their own understanding on the Northern Sea route and extend it from St. Petersburg and Kaliningrad to Vladivostok and name the Northern Sea route the whole water area between these cities. It's not yet in the legal documents, but the intention is there and the national projects are built around it.
Thank you, Ksenia. So who would like, okay, in the middle, and then we'll go there.
Alex Stitt here from the Lloyd's Register Foundation. We own a class society called Lloyd's Register, and I was wondering if the class societies have a role to play here and if any influence they can bring to bear on the design and maintenance of maritime safety going forward.
Who would like to answer? Jim? No?
Sure, I'll take a stab at that. I think the simple answer to your question is yes, absolutely. Classification societies have a role to play here. As I think most of us know, operations in the Arctic are covered under the International Maritime Organization by the Polar Code. The Polar Code talks about safety and environmental protection of the region. The Polar Code has been in operation a while now, and I think there's a feeling that it's a good time to review the Polar Code to see what changes potentially should be made, what additions must be added, and in terms of vessels operating in the region, the Polar Code defines a lot of things that they have to do. Things like a polar water operations manual, certain preparations for the crew, a large number of elements. And of course, classification societies are reviewing the status of vessels and determining their suitability for use in the region. So I think collaboration with classification societies, really, really important as we move forward and try to improve the safety and the environmental protection for the region.
Thank you, Jim. There, please.
Thank you. My name is Tia Lehto-Bichler, and I work for NATO. The presentations have largely focused on why the Northern Sea route shouldn't become an international trade route. I'd like to understand a bit more on your views on why you think it couldn't become. What's the potential for increased shipping given the increased focus by Russia and also China? I know, Ksenia, you already talked a little bit about the additional risk by climate change, but if we could, you could expand a bit on this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So yes, indeed, we think that the Northern Sea route should not and also cannot be the major international trade route. And this second part lays on largely on navigational and safety issues. Navigation issues that I mentioned, that climate change brings more severe cases of weather conditions, unpredictable weather conditions, which makes it unpredictable for vessels to estimate the time of going through the route. Yes, it can be that once, 1 year, the ship goes through the Northern Sea route like in 20 days from China to Europe. But then the next month, it's suddenly stuck somewhere, wait for help for weeks, and then what can you do? How you estimate? And the client on the other side has no understanding when he gets this cargo. And these cases will be usual with the rise of the number of vessels using this route for transit or for commercial purposes. Also, it is unpredictable for shipping companies whether they will need to use the icebreaker escort or not. When they start their voyage, the weather forecast and ice forecast can be favorable. And if they, for example, has no ice class or low ice class, they see that there is no ice condition, they can start their voyage. And then on the half of the way, suddenly the weather changes, the ice just going into one strait or closer to the ship, and then they need icebreaker escort, which rise the cost, also adds some time when the icebreaker will come and escort the vessel. So for the shipping companies, it makes the cost prediction unexpected. And now the cost of icebreaker escort is very low because Russia wants to promote the route. There is no economic profit for using for Russia in providing the icebreaker escort. They cannot cover the building of new icebreakers with the profit that they gain now for using them as for escort. So these are main arguments, I think, why the route cannot be used for intensified shipping. Also safety, as I mentioned. Even if Russia has plans to expand the rescue and search centers and build more rescue and search vessels, but with the so wide area, still adding 1 or 2 additional centers on the coast wouldn't bring the emergency response, wouldn't improve significantly the emergency response time. Still, it wouldn't be enough. If something happens far away from the coast, anyway, you will need a couple of days, weeks to reach it.
Thank you, Ksenia. So, and we have time for one more question. I see. Okay, please.
So I'm Lars Smedsrud from the Bjerknes Center in Bergen doing climate change calculations. So we know that the Arctic sea ice will melt further into the future, and maybe in 2035, in 10 years, the transpolar sea route will be available for a short window of time, right? And then the whole Arctic basin will freeze over pretty quickly in the autumn. So I just wondered how you see this change in the next 10 years and whether this transpolar sea route will be, totally different. It'll be out of Russian waters, and yeah. So how do you see that changing the picture here?
Who is ready to answer? Okay, Jim.
I'll take a quick stab at it. You make an interesting point, and I think one that we often don't really hear the reality that's associated with this, because as you mentioned, we are approaching a time when the transpolar route will likely be open for a limited time. But the time when that will be a predictable route that any shipper could schedule around probably is a much longer time. The ability to, and Ksenia has mentioned this a couple of times, the ability to have a predictable shipping route through this region is limited at best. And I think that while there's a lot of press about increases in shipping through the region, and if you look at it strictly from percentages of increase, it looks like a lot. But what you're really talking about in most situations is a 100% increase that takes you from 35 to 70 transits. These are still really small numbers. And it's simply because of the very factors that we've been talking about. And I think Certainly, the geopolitics of trans-Arctic shipping changes when vessels can avoid the EEZ of Russia or other countries. That certainly changes the geopolitics, but it doesn't change the safety and environmental consequences of using these routes. And it doesn't mean that all of a sudden the cargoes that they're trying to move through those areas are more important, are so important that they need to be taken through these areas. So yeah, again, it's interesting to see when and if this will happen. I'm sure it will, but the utility of it remains very limited.
Thank you, Jim. And we're running out of time, so I would like to thank our speakers for a brilliant presentation and for being with us today. Thank you, all the guests. So I invite you to scan this QR code and stay in touch with Bellona to have updates on our news, our reports, and to subscribe to our digest. So thank you again, and well, we'll have more time to speak with our speakers after this presentation. They give me a word to stay during the coffee break to answer your questions. Thank you very much again.
Good job, Stanley.